Today, I'm extremely happy because I'm bringing you one of those videos you all love so much. It's true that the chess teacher videos, where you teach me strategies to play better and better, are extremely interesting and really good for our understanding. But where I really have fun is when you show me openings that make my opponent start to have a hard time. Those powerful openings, for example, where we go through all the lines to see how to take advantage of them and start winning all our games. So why don't you keep making those videos? Well, let's get to it. I'm going to show you the Alapil opening, which is one of the most poorly played openings, even up to 2000 or 2200 ELO. Our opponents don't know how to react because they get themselves into trouble and start by playing the Sicilian defense. And this is where we set up our Alapil opening. Don't tell me you haven't had the Sicilian opening played against you thousands of times, because let me tell you something. Most people who play the opening, or rather the Sicilian defense, don't actually know how to play it. They've just memorized the moves by heart. That's how it is. And we're going to throw them off with the Alapin, one of my favorite openings against the Sicilian. C3. Pay attention. Here, the only correct move is knight to f6. What's the deal? That nobody plays knight to f6 unless they're a master. Why is that? Because it allows us to advance and attack this knight. So what do most players do here? They play knight to c6, sticking to their habit of making the same moves as in the regular Sicilian, and that doesn't work. Alright then, let's go for it, shall we? Let me show you how to crush your opponents, okay? It's very simple. The idea behind the Alapin is to play this d4. In the Sicilian, we always want to play this d4, right? But what makes the Alapin different from a regular Sicilian is that now, when they capture, which they actually should because in the Sicilian the c-pawn is meant to capture on d4, we're going to recapture with the c-pawn. And when we recapture with the c-pawn, we have an extremely strong center. It's a move, or rather, it's an opening where it's practically impossible, okay, for your opponents to play at 100%, because nobody really prepares properly against the Alapin unless you're a master, like I was saying. What's our sweat? It's obvious, right? These two central pawns have no rivals and can advance very easily. For example, our threat now would be to play d5. Oh, I just hit myself. Sorry. I just hit myself. The idea is that playing d5 threatens a knight that doesn't have any good squares to go to. And that's why here, the black pieces should try to play the 5. You already know it's super important to have pawns in the center. And when I talk about the center, I mean these 4 squares right here. If they don't play d5, they're going to have a bit of a hard time. Would it also be possible to play this e6? Yes, it would be possible, but we would continue with this d5, and after pawn takes and pawn takes, the opponent would be left with a pretty awkward position. This pawn is very lonely here and is really messing up the position. The knight would have to move. Our bishops come out beautifully. This would be a really good position for us. Therefore, here the most common move is this b5. If I'm going too fast, you can rewatch the video as many times as you need. I assure you that in this video, I'm going to give you all the keys to playing the Alapin. And pay attention, because you're going to like it. When they play d5, what do? Very easy, catcher, with the idea that they bring the queen toward the center. If I ask you what you'd like to play here, I'm sure you'd all tell me the same thing. Chess teacher, I'd love to put the knight on c3, so that I attack the queen in the center of the board and develop a piece, right? But what's the problem with knight to c3? That we'd be leaving the d4 pawn attacked by 2 pieces and only defended by the queen. Therefore, we should move this knight to f3 first. You understand me, right? Do we want to play knight to c3? Yes, but we can't because we lose the pawn. So first, knight to f3 to defend. Very good. That's the problem with this move. What I'm about to say is important. If you don't know how to react, you're going to lose. Now, if you understand how to react, your opponent won't be able to do anything. The idea is that here our opponent has this move that looks so dangerous. Don't tell me it doesn't. This move, bishop to g4, poses a very serious threat. It pins the knight, right? Because if we move it, we would lose the queen. And besides, this knight is now useless since it can't move, and it's the defender of this square. So what do I have to do? A passive move like bishop to e2 would be a mistake, because after the exchanges, bishop takes and bishop takes, we would lose this pawn. What do I have to do? A rather ugly move like bishop to e3? Well, no, don't worry, because there's actually a solution to this move, and it's really simpler than you might think. In fact, the right idea is to just ignore this strat and play knight to c3 anyway, attacking the queen, okay? For the more advanced players, alright? Here we have a typical isolated queen's pawn position, right? If you're a bit more of a casual player and don't know all these concepts, don't worry. I'm explaining it so everyone can understand. Now, if you want to understand a bit more, I'll leave it for you in the description. And there, for example, this past weekend, we talked about the isolated queen's pawn. Alright? Very good. When you have an isolated queen's pawn, you need to do something. Do you know what you have to do? Be aggressive. Because if not, we're going to end up in a worse endgame. It's that simple. The side with an isolated queen's pawn has the advantage now at the start of the game and the disadvantage in the endgame. Titiane, isn't it that simple? So we need to be aggressive. Knight to c3, attacking the queen. If they retreat, as simple as that, attack the queen and they pull back, don't worry, because here we'll be much better off. And now I'm going to show you. But first of all, what happens, chess teacher, if they capture my knight and attack my queen? Because I have to consider this no matter what. If I capture their queen, they capture mine. What's going on here? Well, they're going into an inferior line where we're going to win. It's that simple. So what advantage do we have? That, as we've already studied in this video, we know what to do and they don't know what they're going to do. The idea is that here we're going to get into the mess. Forced moves, knight takes queen. If we capture the queen, we force our opponent to capture ours. Any other move would be losing. And now we can continue, instead of capturing this bishop, with this knight to c7 check. Not only is it check, but we're going to capture the rook on the next move. And in fact, that's exactly what we're going to do. Alright, the idea now is that logically, our opponent doesn't want to lose the bishop, so they have to move it back. It doesn't matter where they move it. Alright? Completely irrelevant. Let's take a moment to analyze this situation. How are we doing in terms of material? Well, look, we have a lot. In exchange for a chess knight, it's that simple. Or in exchange for a minor piece, in this case, a knight. So be careful. If they manage to capture this knight with the king, it won't be so easy to win. In fact, black would even leave heir. What do we need to do? Try not to let them capture this knight. Do you remember what I told you to do when we had an isolated queen's pawn? Be aggressive. Well, here we go. d5, a very good move. I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, well, Chessnitcher, it's true that you're attacking a lot here, but you're leaving something undefended. Your opponent can attack even more. Whether it's jumping to b4 or jumping to d4, you're actually helping your opponent start attacking you a lot. In fact, they're threatening us with the same thing we were threatening them with, right? Knight to c2, check, and I take the rook. So what shall I do? Defend this square? No. We're winning. We're not worried about them attacking us so much. Pay attention. First of all, how do I open up the c7 square so the knight can get out? Simple, bishop to f4, and now this bishop defends the c7 square, so the knight can leave through c7 whenever it wants. The Chestiker, you're going hot seat. Yes, I'm going crazy, but don't worry, I've studied all of this very thoroughly, so review it as many times as you need because it works. Knight to c2 check, and they take my rook. I don't care. Go ahead, take my rook, because, whoa, the rook has gone crazy. Oh, you'll forgive me, right? Because I'm here recording. The idea is that now our attack is devastating. And how does the attack start? Bishop to b5 check, and the king is in serious trouble now. Really, really bad. In fact, he only has two squares. He could retreat either to d8 or c8. Let's suppose he goes to c8, which is a losing move, because a very beautiful forced mate is coming up. For those of you with a good memory, I'm going to sing it to you so you can memorize it. Rook to c1 check, and the king has to move aside. When he moves, we bring in the bishop, so he has to go back behind again, you see. If he comes this way, the bishop is there, so he has to go this way. And now, how do we win? Well, this is the move you need to remember. The knight sacrifice on b6. It might sound like Greek to you, but don't worry, it's not complicated. This is already a forced mate. They can only capture the knight, and after bishop takes. It's a discovered check, and here it's impossible to stop the rook from coming in. There are probably other ways to win, but I'm showing you this one because it's the most straightforward. If you remember it, you'll deliver a forced checkmate. Pay attention to this. What happens if they play d5 right away? That's a move that's extremely common against the pin defense. Don't worry, because since you're understanding the ideas, it's going to be super easy to get. We capture. The queen will come, right? And now what are we going to be for? So we play d4 ourselves. It's the same as what we did before, but without the d4 pawn, remember? We just exchanged earlier, and that's it. Pawn takes pawn. Pawn takes pawn, we have an isolated queen's pawn. They can start attacking it, which is a very good idea, because if not, we're going to play knight to c3 right away, and we'll have a very good position. When they attack, do you remember what we were supposed to do? It's important to bring the knight here first to defend the pawn. Don't leave the pawn hanging and play knight to c3 first, okay? First, knight to f3. But of course, there was a move that really bothered us. A bishop right here. Do you remember how we were supposed to continue or not? Well, that's right, knight to c3. Without worrying at all. Let me show you something. When they capture here, do you remember what you are supposed to do? Obviously, capture the queen. Why? Because they have to capture too, or else they'll lose the game immediately. And then we would jump in to give this check. Well, all of this was forced, right? I love forced moves because there's no other choice. If they don't want to lose the bishop, they can go wherever you want. The best move for black is this bishop to h5. The idea is that now we should keep up the initiative. Don't worry if we're reviewing, because it's when we review that the moves really stick in your mind. Also, we're in a position that I'd say is identical, but we've reached it in a different way. This is what's great about the Alapin. So, do you remember here, we weren't supposed to be too forceful. d5 before we went to d4, just so you see it's the same. They can also jump to any other square, for example, b4, attacking this pawn and especially threatening the fork. Do you remember what we could do? Let's see, you have a lot of good moves. For example, bishop to b4. Bishop to b5 would also be a very good move, but I think it's a bit simpler to play this bishop to f4. Letting the knight come in with the fork doesn't bother us. Why were we going to make this check? I showed you that if they went to c8, we had a mate with rook to c1. Do you remember? Very nice. But of course, just occur, if they come here, if they go back, which is the other option, then you don't have this check anymore. How should I do it? Well, don't worry, because I'm going to show you another way to win immediately here. First, you give a check, thanks to the knight defending the bishop, and the king has no choice but to come this way. And those of you who are a bit more advanced will understand that we're in a very similar position, and the move, what will it be? Rook to c1 again, bringing the rook into the attack. Do you see the difference between our pieces and the opponent's pieces? The opponent's pieces aren't doing absolutely anything. Very good. So here, they can try all sorts of things, right? They can play anything. e6, knight to f6, b6, anything. The most common move is b6. Really? Here you should try to figure out on your own how to win the game, but it's simple. For example, here we can give a discovered check. The king has to move, and most likely with rook to c7, forcing the king. Check. The knight is going to be a forced mate. For example, here bishop takes a7, and there's no way to stop this bishop c3 checkmate. Just teacher, you're basing the whole video on the idea that when you play knight to c3, they capture the knight and go into this line. Why? Well, I'm going to explain it to you because it's the only way that seems like they can save themselves. However, if they try to move their queen when it's attacked after this knight to c3, I assume all of you already know how to reach this position because we've studied it twice in this class. If not, no problem, okay? You can watch it as many times as you need, of course. The idea is that here, if the queen moves, it's actually even worse. And I'm showing you this because it's very simple. Let's suppose they move the queen, I don't know, to d8 to avoid problems. Spoiler, it doesn't avoid them. The idea is that here our central pawn is way too active. Remember what I was telling me, right? Pay attention, D. 5, anyway, threatening the knight. The knight doesn't have any good squares. Wherever it goes, our position is 1,000 times better. So you understand me. For all those fans of studying with the engine, this position is +3 for the white pieces, okay? It's as if we had an extra piece. Just imagine how good our position is. But of course, there's something you absolutely need to know, and that's why I'm showing you this line. It's super important to know how to react when they hit you with this counterblow. Knight to e5. Why? Because they're threatening us with a really strong pin. If we move the knight, we'd lose the queen, And now they're bringing this piece into the attack as well. A lot of you might think, well, I'll play bishop e2 here before it's too late, but that would actually benefit the black pieces. In fact, there's a way to win immediately, and that's by getting into the game. Do you know how? Pay attention, okay? It's very simple. Knight takes e5. It's that simple. Sacrificing the queen. Completely. Well, once this knight is captured, they have no choice but to take the queen, because otherwise they'll be down a piece, right? So what happens when they take your queen? Well, we're just giving it up temporarily. What's the move here? Bishop to b5, check, and the king has nowhere to go. What do they have to do? Give up the queen? And not only that, but we're going to end up with a huge material advantage. Watch closely how it continues. We simply capture with the bishop, because that way, defended by the knight, we give check, and the king has to move. And it doesn't end here, because now we can bring in the knight. Knight takes on f7, check, and I'm going to take the rook. And now, friends, we can either take the rook or take the bishop. Which one should we take? If you said the rook, that's a mistake. Why? Because it's very simple. It's true that the rook is worth more than the bishop. However, the bishop can escape, but the rook can't. So I take the bishop, and then I also take the rook. You see it? Because the rook can't go anywhere. If we capture the rook first, the bishop escapes. Right? And so now, once we've captured the bishop, no matter what they do, I capture the rook, and as you can see, the material difference is huge. We have the rook, completely free as an advantage, and a knight, also completely free as an advantage. Even if they end up capturing it, if they manage to, and that's a big if, then we would still have a clean rook up. So as you can see, the Alapin opening is a very strong opening, especially for all those players with the black pieces who don't have a 2200 ELO or higher and don't know how to properly play the Sicilian defense against the Alapin. So I would tell you to try it out right now, because it's a really good opening. I've tried it myself. Of course, you can subscribe to my newsletter for free to receive content every Sunday by email, also for free. And stay tuned, because you'll be the first to know about everything I'm going to release this year. I've been telling you this in the last few videos. There's very little time left before the first big surprise of 2026 drops. I've managed to get you something that's going to fascinate you. I'm giving you a heads up. You'll see it's gonna fascinate you. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you subscribe to the newsletter, besides the free content, you'll be the first to know about everything I release, alright? And leave me a big like if you enjoy this style of video, let me know whatever you want in the comments, and I'll see you tomorrow, as always, at the same time and on the same channel with the next video, friends. Goodbye!